Hi, this is Jenna.
And I'm Heather.
And this is Conspiracies Unlocked. We are doing John Titor, the time traveler. This is part 3. And right now we are still going over all of his discussion board posts from 2000 to 2001 when he came back from the future in 2036. So we are just kind of seeing what he said, because even if John Titor is not really a time traveler, let's just put that aside and pretend that's not real. Whoever posted this stuff did make predictions in 2000 and 2001. So we're just kind of going through and seeing what the predictions, if they have come true, and some of them have come true, and what was maybe just guesses and what didn't come true at all. So we're going to start off on January 26, 2001. John Titor talked more about the government and the new Constitution. This would be the government and the Constitution in 2036. He says, during this Congress, the leaders discovered and decided that coming up with a new and better form of government was nearly impossible. The original Constitution itself was not the problem. It was the ignorance of people that lived under it. So he's saying that our Constitution right now, it was working, the government was working, but the people who were like supposed to uphold it and they were stupid and they don't know how to, and so they had to fix it on his timeline in the year 2036. And someone asked him in the forums, do you like your new Constitution? And he says, from my viewpoint, it's very effective. I'm a very strong believer in local or state rights, which I think is like, just from his thought process, is pretty spot on. Like, you want to be, I think it is better to be governed locally than at the presidential level. I mean, then you get really like, you get your needs met because there's less people to govern per area, you know?
And I feel like too, not only that, but it's more attainable for you to be able to get in touch with your local representative than it is to reach to the president.
Yeah.
There's too many people you have to go through to reach the president.
Yeah.
So if it's just your local governor, or I guess it would be their local president, because they have 5 presidents for each territory. It would be easier to manage for your area.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure there's many parts of the country that that Biden has not seen, Trump or any president has not seen, some of these rural areas that probably could really use some TLC and has been ignored and pushed to the side for ever, pretty much.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
Yes. So then he starts answering questions on how he intends to get home. He said, they ask, when are you leaving to go home? And Titor said that there are certain windows I must wait for in order to leave. There will be 2 this year. The first one opens this spring. So I'm wondering if it has to do with like the spring and fall equinox.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Like
yeah.
something to do with like the planetary alignments or something. I'm not sure. So it didn't go into detail of that, but and then they ask, is it possible for you to return to this timeline once you leave? And he says, not with the machine I have now. Previously, he has said that there are other machines, and that there are, and that he's like pretty much working with like the lowest machine, but they do have better machines that can do more things, go to further timelines with more accuracy and they haven't hit zero divergence yet, but they do say that they are working on that. So, you know, with technology, it's always getting better and better. So he's just in one of the first models, and they only have, he said that there's only 12 time machines like total. So from all the models and all the different ones, there's only 12 total.
I feel like that's a lot though. I mean, 12.
I guess, I mean, if you got one new one every year or one every 6 months, a new model, you know, I'm not sure, like, so anyways, he then talks about the multiverses He was asked, where did multiverse come from as a theory? Where is evidence of its existence? And he says, I believe the closest non-related evidence for the multi-universes right now comes from the physics derived from special relativity of rotating Kerr black holes. If you examine a typical Melrose map, science agrees that you can travel to other universes through these cosmic oddities. They can't be different places in your own universe, so you can't go in your own world line. Because that would be zero divergence.
Oh, yeah.
So they haven't gotten to zero divergence yet. And they said that that they don't think they ever will be able to, because you would have to violate the speed of light limit to get there. So you can't, so even if time travel is real and all that, they are saying that there is no way for you to be able to get back in time on your own timeline. So you would never affect your own timeline.
But even like when you said that he was at one point, he was with himself.
He is, yes.
And he still didn't affect his timeline, even being with his own self.
Yes, no, because his self and his parents have no recollection on his original timeline of ever meeting him in the future.
That's why.
So it's a different timeline, yeah.
And
he talks about it through here too, and he says, on whatever I do here doesn't affect my timeline.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys do here doesn't affect my timeline because I'm on my timeline. And he doesn't even know if he'll be able to get back to his timeline.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a scary feeling, not knowing if you can get back.
But he wouldn't notice. And
yeah,
because there's such a small percentage of, the way that he describes it is that there is such a small percentage of divergence that in one of the timelines that he would fall back into, it would be such small differences that he wouldn't notice, and that in those instances he would still be traveling somewhere in another timeline.
It doesn't even
so
matter.
He would come back to the same spot that the other one left. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's confusing, but like I'm trying to picture
it would just they wouldn't know that like the people in his timeline or in the timeline that he lands on wouldn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. They would just know he's back, and he would only be gone for a split second, even though he's been here for a year. But to him,
would only be like a second to the family.
to the people, to the wherever he left from. Mm-hmm. So his bosses or wherever the time machine is held or whatever government facility
really
he's
interesting.
in. But they wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, and he wouldn't either until Mandela effect type things started to happen. Mm-hmm. But for him to go back, it would be the most closest. So it would be like maybe a 0.01% divergence. Mm-hmm. So it would be like, oh, I thought that I was wearing blue shoes.
Yeah, so it's not really anything that's going to affect anything.
Yeah. So, where was I? So then so since the existence, did I read this part? Since the existence of multiverses is a reality from my viewpoint, please allow me to disclose an idea we toss around a bit in 2036. Since all possibilities, outcomes, and events are occurring and exist simultaneously, it would mean there are multiple universes out there where you are living a day behind and a day ahead of the you in this universe.
So
there's multiples, like, so not even multiple of this day, mm-hmm. but multiple, like, not multiples of us in this day
like
doing
parallel?
Is it no, it's parallel? Not even just parallel. It's like there's parts of us that are still living in yesterday. There's another you that's in yesterday. There's another you that's in tomorrow. So not only does the fabric of time like go horizontally, but now it's going vertically too. The timelines mm-hmm. are going both ways, diagonal in every which way. And then he was asked, there are some...
You know, that reminds me of that movie with Matthew McConaughey where he goes back in time and then there's like all of the different slices of time. What movie is that?
I had it until you said Matthew McConaughey. Oh my gosh. We'll think of it in 2 seconds. It starts with a C. So then he asked this long ass question that like really got my head going. So he said, there are some who believe that memory is some sort of information transfer or communication with the yous in the past. across the world lines and universes. Although this is seemingly quite ridiculous if you think that could be true, then physics tells us that the same information transfer from our future selves on other world lines is not only possible, but certain. Could it be that fantasy or what if scenarios that are actually future memory from an alternate us on a future world line?
I like that. That's
so
really
do you think that our dreams are us in other universes?
Yes.
Right?
I really do think that when you dream, you go to almost like another universe or realm or different like... Yeah. And I feel like if people visit you that have passed away in your dream, they are actually crossing over and they're sending you a message. From the other universe or the other universe. Line, realm, world universe, dimension, plane.
It's interesting, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. According to physics, there is no reason why this cannot be true. Mm-hmm. That's what he says.
Yes, I did see a post too saying that when you sleep, if you get the recommended hours of sleep, for 3 hours of that time, you are actually in another state of consciousness, like another state of being, almost like another dimension or realm.
That's crazy. So then on January 26, 2001, he posted there was more questions about how to get back to his world line, and he does answer them with an analogy that I like, so I'm just going to read what he has here. So they asked, your mission to go back in time seems rather pointless since you stated earlier there's no way to get back to your exact starting point on his timeline. And then he says, the reality of infinite possibilities is rather difficult to get a grip on, and if it were not for the math, I would delegate it to the realm of religion. I like to think of it as standing in a room with mirrors on all the walls. I can look to my right and left and see many me's, all doing exactly the same thing. If we all took a step to our right and passed through a dimensional doorway to the next mirrored room, it would be very difficult to tell if anything had changed. In that sense, there are an infinite number of world lines waiting for me to return with the computer. If I can get to one of them, I have completed my mission. So that's what I was like saying, that just as long as he gets back to one of them, then he's good.
And you know what that made me think of with mirrors? You know when you go to a carnival and you go through the mirror maze and you see all the views and you don't know which way is the right way because it's all like, it's all
the mirror maze. I love those.
Yeah, I used to love those so much.
When my 7-year-old was like 2 or 3, he ran in one before I could stop him and he went bing and fell back and like he cut his head and everything. It was horrible. He like went running straight for it and like a Scooby-Doo cartoon, like bing backwards. Mm-hmm. So sad.
And then the movie Inception came to mind right now when you were reading all of that. With,
is that Leonardo DiCaprio? I never saw that one.
And how he can bend time and space and morph things and create and destroy, not destroy, but bend time and space and change his environment and surroundings.
I've never seen that one. I'll have to check it out.
It's a good one, Inception.
So then he goes on to say, it would seem that another time travel that looks like you could arrive on your world line of origin with another IBM computer and no one would know the difference. And he replies, bingo. Seems like something they would do a lot of psychological testing for before they send us off. Mm-hmm. And earlier he was talking about how they have to go through 2 years of extensive physical as well as psychological testing and training to become a time traveler. And that, kind of like NASA, I would imagine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But not only the training, but they have to have the ideal background with the same goals to put in motion. So he's like, no, I'm not going to tell you this. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to give you the winning numbers. I'm not, all that stuff for personal gain, because he could potentially go get a history book, look at everything, and then go back with that, and then just live his life on this other timeline perfectly, all nice and dandy.
Yeah.
And just leave his timeline fine. You
know?
Because
he knows what to avoid and where to be, and
so
he knows what's going to happen, so he can have the best outcome for himself, even if he doesn't tell anybody else what is happening.
Yeah,
he can have the best outcome for himself. Yeah.
So So John Titor was able to because his grandfather helped build the time machine, and he has a background in military, so that's what made him the candidate. But if he had not passed the 2 years of training, he would have gotten the boot and not been able to go.
Okay.
So it's like really extensive because they want your mental state to be good, and they want to make sure that you're in it for the same goals as everybody is in it.
Yeah. Because if they have the wrong person in it, they could be in there trying to like just doing it so they can get the winning numbers of this lottery or like whatever.
Exactly. So then all of a sudden it seems that he switched discussion boards, and as of January 28th, 2001, he is like immediately answering the same type of questions, but does say that he likes this discussion board better because it is more of a conversation than an attack. So so I skimmed through a lot of it, and I just wanted to see if we get any more information from what we already did, and there is more information. So he's back to talking about and clarifying how he would get back to his timeline, because he is now saying he probably won't, but another one of him will, and no one will notice the difference. So exactly what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, what's the point of fixing something in one world line if there's an infinite number of world lines where a problem doesn't exist? And that was actually a question from someone else. And he says, our actions and decisions are based on the knowledge we have in our own world line. Yes, the bell-shaped curve is a useful tool, but if we are capable of change, for the better, then we feel we should at least try. Even if, quote unquote, I don't return to my exact world line, a similar me probably will. Besides, I just look at it as helping a world line where their time-traveling me didn't show up, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
So then January 28th, 2001, and he talks about his flight and how he goes from years to years. So his initial flight was from 2036 to 1975, which is 61 years. I then went from 1975 to 2000, 20 years later. Later this year, one of my 2 favorable windows will be open, and I will return to my 2036, 35 years forward. I am here now for personal reasons. The webpage is not mine. I have been speaking online for about 3 months, and the page is a collection of the various documents and pictures I have sent to the other individuals. And I do have pictures of certain things that we will post, that I'll have to send to you, Heather, and we'll post them. And then he goes on to say, also, I realize there is no way for anyone to believe me with absolute certainty, so I'm hoping I am at least entertaining. You may be interested to know that even in 2036, there are a large number of people who don't believe in time travel. Are you sure the world is round? Like what is he saying now?
Are you sure the world's round?
Yeah, like why is he asking that?
Is that like a hint at the flat earth or what?
So January 29th, he says, in the last few months, I have had numerous extended conversations online, and there are quite a few things I've said which can easily be checked out, but haven't. I get no pleasure out of being right when it comes to the CJD disease, war in the Middle East, or suffering people in faraway lands. There is nothing like the look on someone's face when you tell them 100,000 people will be dead tomorrow. True. In my travels, I have discovered that most people really don't want to know about the future, because if it's different than what they want, it ticks them off. Actually, I don't blame them. So let's just talk about that. War in the Middle East. They're like, I guess they're always at war, but literally.
But there's been increasing war.
Yeah,
though.
But in that time period, because that was January 2001, literally in 8.5 months later was 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And that created like the biggest war in the Middle East, at least like in our lifetime, that I think, right?
I mean, that was a huge
factor, huge.
Yeah.
So, and then they ask, are the Olympics still being played in the future? And he says, as a result of the many conflicts, no, there were no official Olympics after 2004. However, it appears they may be revived in 2040. But like that never happened.
We had Olympics.
Even in 2020, they had Olympics. Didn't they? They didn't call off anything. They've always had them. So that was wrong.
I don't know if there was Olympics in 2020. If there wasn't, nobody could go to them. It would just be the athletes.
The athletes, yeah. I think that they still did it. Somebody asked, why are there only 2 windows of opportunity for you to go back? Does this have anything to do with the weather? And he says the weather isn't a factor as much as gravitational tidal forces are at the point of arrival. So that's why I was thinking the spring or autumn equinox because of the tidal and the moon and where everything is.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, so this gets interesting because this is how he talks about time travel and how the divergence works. So he says the distortion unit reaches its target destination by using very sensitive gravity sensors and atomic clocks. The basic unit of calculation is the second. So yes, in a sense, you do, quote unquote, dial in a date and the computer system controls the distortion field. At maximum power, the unit I have is capable of traveling about 10 years an hour.
10 years.
So it would take 5 hours for him to get back to 1975. Or 6 hours. And then he goes on, unfortunately, time travel is not an exact science. There is inherent error and chaos in the computer's ability to make accurate calculations. Based on the current technology of the clocks and sensors, distortion units are only accurate to about 60 years or so. So no, in 2036, we are unable to travel back 1,000 years due to the error rate in the system. The divergence between the world line of origin and the target world line would be too great. If one were to try and travel back that far, history would look nothing like what you would expect. So if you were to go past 60 years, the divergence would all of a sudden be like 50% of the world. It'd be totally different. Yeah. And then he says, listen to this. The year 2008 was a general date by which time everyone will realize the world they thought they were living in was over. The Civil War in the United States will start in 2004. I would describe it as having a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse. The conflict will consume everyone in the U.S. by 2012 and end in 2015 with a very short World War III. Okay, obviously these events never happened, but many people do believe that either 2008 or 2012 was the end of our timeline and we diverged with another timeline, causing the Mandela effect.
Maybe because of CERN?
Well, then as far as the events happening every month, didn't we have that in 2019 and 2020? We had the Australian fires, COVID, like it was like every month something new was happening, right? So maybe his predictions are true, but in this time they're like a decade behind. So maybe he was able to inadvertently stop some of the issues from happening sooner, but they're still happening later. And so we have had the math to time travel since the 70s. We just didn't have the technology. He also said that. So it's almost like a puzzle. We had most of the pieces, but didn't know how they fit together. And we had to wait for like the last few pieces to come into play before we figured out the puzzle.
I wonder if any of the stuff that they're using could be from crafts that they reverse engineered from
aliens.
Other world or aliens or something.
Like we said in the other episode, he thinks the aliens might be time travelers too. Mm-hmm. So what if they are reverse engineering from other time travelers?
And it's just our technology, but from the future.
From way in the future.
And then somehow we got it from when they crashed.
Yeah.
And then they're making these time machines with them.
So, February 4th, 2001, he talks more about the government in 2036. He is asked, if you could change one thing about your government right now, what would it be? And he says the United States is still a representative of republic in 2036, but it was touch and go for a while. After the war, the U.S. had divided into 5 general areas based on their economic and defensive strengths. Many people blamed the government organization for the war, and the last Constitutional Congress was held in 2020 to officially scrap the Constitution and start over.
New World Order?
Mm-hmm. Fortunately, but he says that he's not scared of the New World Order because it already happened for him. Fortunately, this exercise in anger pointed out how hard it was to come up with anything better. It was decided the document wasn't at fault. As a result, there have been a few small changes to the Constitution and the executive branch, but you would easily recognize it. The average citizen is more educated about the Constitution and aware of their rights and responsibilities it gives them. Federal power has been decentralized, and the focus of daily politics is in the state senates. Federal law has also been streamlined, but much harder to change or make additions to. So then he moves on to talk about why he was on the mission to the 70s. And he says that, the people who signed my paycheck told me why we needed a 5100 and sent me off to get one. I was not in a position to make alternate suggestions. As I recall, isn't the Cray a rather large system? We need something portable. The 5100 isn't required for its reliability. It needed to translate APL, Unix, and a few obscure IBM mainframe languages. See, it's like super repetitive, but then we get like just a bit more information with each repetitive like post. And then, okay, then this one, as far as space travel goes, no, we are not on Mars yet, but we're trying very hard so we can avoid another Hell's Kitchen outcome from an overpopulated Earth. And I was like, Hell's Kitchen? That's like the TV show, but that didn't premiere until 2005.
I don't think he's talking about the
No, I know,
TV
but
show.
I was like, I wonder if Hell's Kitchen, that's where they got it, was from the guy who created Hell's Kitchen was reading his message board. But then I did some more research on Hell's Kitchen, and there is a neighborhood in Manhattan called Hell's Kitchen because of how dangerous and hot and gross it is.
Wait, where is that?
In Manhattan. So I'm like, but either way, the person who made Hell's Kitchen, the TV show, either read his posts.
I thought it was just Hell's Kitchen because Gordon Ramsay
is like
cusses
the
at
devil,
everybody
yeah.
and yells at everybody.
I don't
and
know.
Makes everybody feel
But
like
I was
crap.
like, but it's Hell's Kitchen and it's in quotes in his on his post and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird.
Maybe it's just like Hell's Kitchen, as in like the devil's cooking up something.
I don't know. But anyways, then this is where it gets fun because John Titor gets all philosophical. Philosophical? Is that a word? Whatever.
I'm not even going to try to say it.
Philosophical, yeah. And on February 2nd, 2001, he says, on a philosophical level, the existence of multiple worlds implies a moral balance in the superverse. For every world line you perform a good action, there is a world line where you perform a bad action. There are no good and bad people, just good and bad decisions. We can only be responsible for what we do as individuals on the world line we are on now. Then he gets religious. If time travel is possible, what does that do to the religious? If I exist on many timelines, which one is really me? So they're asking like which one would go to heaven.
Yeah.
And he says, this is an excellent question that causes a great deal of controversy. Since every possible outcome, event, and possibility is happening and will happen, then all good and all evil balances out in the superverse. After the reality of multiple worlds... So
you can do whatever you want, it'll balance out.
Yeah, it'll balance out. That's what I was just thinking. Like, we can just do whatever. It's fine.
Just do whatever.
Because I might not kill someone, but my other one did kill someone.
So you're good because you
I balanced myself out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it says, after the reality of multiple worlds sank into our collective thought, the one basic change to all religious dogma is the concept that good and evil does not exist as an organized force in our lives, nor can it be used as a useful way to judge what God may think of a situation. Good and evil are personal experiences that can only guide what we do as individuals and how we relate to others. The outlook also makes it impossible for me to judge any other person or event. We cannot see the entire universe as God sees it. Therefore, we will never be gods or be capable of judging anything outside of ourselves. My actions can only be judged as good and bad by me and my God.
True. So, only God can judge you.
Yeah, but it's if
you believe in God.
Okay, yeah. So then there's another area of thought that maintains all of the yous out there. So all the universal yous will make up the quote-unquote you that eventually returns to God. In that manner, it is frustrating to know that you are capable of and acting on all the thoughts and ideas you have regardless of what the you here is doing. How good or evil do you think you can be? So that's interesting because that's what we were just saying. Like, it's very weird. It's very interesting. And then he says, I think there's only one God. I also think our soul may be a combination of all the collective thoughts and actions of the infinite yous.
Ooh, that's good.
If that is true, it becomes very difficult to define death until all world lines come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
But is there an end?
Not if you can live to 500 years with medical science evolving.
There's even an idea supported in physics apparently, but I have a hard time with this one. This is his words, not mine. There is some sort of communication going on between all of the yous that are out there. Some people think that memories, intuition, and conscious are actually attempts by one version of you to talk to another. So like when we have,
or another version completely.
Like that your subconscious is another you, or like how you have an intuition, oh, I shouldn't go this way. It's because maybe another you on another timeline went that way and you got murdered.
And they're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, so your intuition could be the you on the other timeline that died.
But you know what? Some people don't have inner monologues.
That's weird. Maybe they only live on one timeline. Maybe they're NPCs.
Yes.
That's what it has to be.
Yes, they are NPCs for sure. Then.
Yeah. Definitely non-player character. And then he has like jokes. I don't know if he's joking because he doesn't take like some of the sarcasm and stuff. He doesn't really take it well. He doesn't really understand like, oh, I don't buy your story. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not selling anything. So how can you buy my story? But anyways, he says, potential hazard of being a time traveler. Always putting things off until you can get back to doing them. I'm like,
yeah, that's a good one.
And then what's even worse is having the ability to go back and help the you there, and you won't even listen to yourself. I'm like, he's funny.
Oh yeah, you won't even listen to yourself.
Yeah. And then he talks more about the IBM 5100, and that the reason why he's here for it is because it will have a time error in 2038, and many of the mainframe systems will just crash, and that is why they need that first operating system, because the first operating system is what like ran everything, and then as it progressed they like stopped using it, but they need it to reprogram to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, okay.
But here's what's funny. Here's what his father thought in 2001. Which is the timeline that he's in right now. So it's 2001. This timeline he says, when I arrived, I approached my father and was easily able to prove to him who I was. I am currently with my parents and the me who was 3.
Yeah, see? 3.
Yeah. They are very aware of what I am doing, why I am here, and when I will be leaving. It may interest you to know that my father still does not truly believe the machine works, even after touching and seeing it. Yes, education is still taught in a classroom, but the entire focus on system looks nothing like what you have now. Don't worry, you won't miss it. Like, so his own dad doesn't even believe in time.
So his own dad doesn't even believe it, but he's there with his 3-year-old self.
Yeah.
So how else would he be there with his 3-year-old
self? He's seen the time machine and everything. I know. Isn't that weird?
That is so weird.
So, but people on his own timeline doesn't believe it, and you can easily, like, it's there, and they don't even believe it. So, it's just like things that happen in our world right now that is there and happening, like cloud seeding and HARP and all this stuff, that people are still like, no, it's not real, when it is.
You can look up the patents for these
things. Like it's real life. It's on the government websites and everything. So
yeah, it's not it's public knowledge if you know where to find it.
It's not an alternative fact or anything weird. So
he did touch on a lot of things like CERN. Yeah. And the Middle East war.
Yeah.
And
that's not all of it. I'm just ending there. There's probably gonna be like at least one more part of information, but it's probably just gonna be the same repetitive stuff. So I'm gonna try to make it less. Yeah. But it's a lot to sift through, and then I get worried that I'm gonna like forget things. Or like, or it'll be pertinent later. Because a bunch of times I was reading and I was like, oh, this doesn't matter right now. And then it will come up later. And I'm like, fuck, what exactly did that say? So it always like, it keeps coming back because it keeps talking in circles. It's like reading Britney Spears' book.
Oh, gosh.
So, okay, well, that was it. So stay tuned for next week for part 4. So thank you guys so much for listening, and don't forget to
share, like, and subscribe.
And email us at conspiraciesunlocked@gmail.com. Bye!
So hot in here.
I know.
It's so hot.
We had to turn off the air conditioning because it was making too much noise. So
yeah, so sorry about that.
Yeah, but we are gonna go now. So thank you. Bye.
Bye.